Welcome to Take It from the Iron Woman. My name is Susanne Müller, your host and the Iron Woman. This podcast is about empowering yourself and others to make real changes in the world. You will hear from everyday, smart, sophisticated, hip people like you and me. Not everybody has to be an Iron Woman to impress the world. Together, we will learn from the sports and business leaders how you can become a more successful person as an entrepreneur or a leader. It's one step at a time, one day at a time. Take your steps now. Take your big steps now. Join me on this journey to success. This podcast is being sponsored by Get Loopy. On episode 41, you can hear the story of Isabel, the co-founder and CEO. Get Loopy, get a 20% discount off your first order. GetLoopy.com. Take it from the Iron Woman. We have spoken to Caroline before. Caroline went through a lot of transitions in her life. Everything sounds very glamorous, but we have to go through those transitions, and we learned from the other episode, if you put your mind to it, it can get done. So Caroline, tell us about your multiple transitions that you have had over the past few years.
I've had a few, but I always look at them as the blessing in disguise. It makes you wake up and just go, wait a minute, I've been on this treadmill now, and this is a little change that's happening, and it's happening for a good reason. So I worked in the fashion industry. I got to travel all over the world. I had so much fun. It was hard work, but I was very passionate about it. And then as the industry started to change and companies were downsizing and fast fashion was like taking over cheap, and nobody cared to pay good money for well-made clothing. And I was working in the sort of luxury end of the brand. And that was all changing. I ended up losing my job. I remember the day was a beautiful sunny day. I called my husband and I said, I just lost my job. And he said, that's fantastic. I said, what do you mean that's fantastic? He said, you've been miserable for the past 2 years. And I was like, I was? And then I was like, I guess I was. Because it was like, they use that expression, you're on the Titanic and everybody's moving the deck chairs, but you're still sinking. So you're working hard, furiously, and it's not helping. The company's still going downhill. So I walked to Central Park that day and I sat on a park bench, and for the first time I'm looking up and I see the clear blue sky and the birds flying overhead. And I was just like, I'm free. I felt like somebody released me from prison. And I was like, wow, what do I do now? And then I asked my husband that later, and he said, what do you want to do? And I said, you know what? I think I want to go back to school. And he said, do it. So within 10 days of losing my job, I enrolled in school and I went back and I got my MBA because I said, I want to understand. I had a creative background, but I didn't have a business background. And it really bothered me. Why is a good company failing today? And why is another company going through the roof that they can't even keep up with the demand? So that supply and demand and how everything was changing, I wanted a background to be able to understand that in a more professional way. So long story short, went back to school, and it was the best thing I ever did.
And how many years were you in the fashion industry? I think this is impressive, especially for listeners to hear, like, the fashion industry sounds always so glamorous.
20 plus years working in design. I guess I was there at one company 23 years, and a few years before that with some luxury brands. But I graduated from FIT in 1985. But it's not the same industry anymore. When I first started, everything was done by hand. You carried a portfolio that was hand drawn.
Except when you lose the job. So how long were you there for?
It's glamorous for the consumer. And then there's a lot of worker bees on the production side. So I went to the factories. I was like working long hours to make a beautiful product, which I enjoyed. It was a lot of fun, but it's certainly not the glamorous side. The glamorous side is the show that you put on for the customer to make them buy. It's all the smoke and mirrors, and the stuff that goes on behind the scenes is not so pretty sometimes. And it's gotten worse, unfortunately, with the cheap labor and all of that goes on behind the scenes that nobody really wants to talk about, but it's there. Now it's all done on Adobe Illustrator. Nobody does anything by hand anymore. And so if you're not computer literate and you don't know how to do all of that stuff, I went back to school and I learned how to do all of it, but it's changed so much. And that's why I wasn't passionate about it anymore. So we need to get dressed, but it's a different industry.
Yeah.
So I still am involved in the industry. I'm on the board for OWIT, which stands for Organization for Women in International Trade. And so we look at the supply chain and helping businesses all over the world to be transparent in where their goods are being made, and looking at the labor force and supply chain of raw materials and all of that from the beginning to the final consumer. And that's happening.
Like sourcing where the stuff comes from. Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah,
We need you.
Transparent supply chain. Where are my goods being made? Who's making them?
Yeah.
And where are these raw materials being made? Are the workers being treated properly throughout the whole process? And there's a price comes with that. The cheaper something goes and somebody's still making a profit, there's something dirty going on behind the scenes. So I couldn't stand that aspect of it anymore. One of the people on the board is also part of the Fair Trade Coalition. And that's also, there's a couple of them where it's all about the sourcing and the ethics that go on behind the scenes in the fashion industry. And that's where my heart lies today, where I think that all has to change, right? The way we're making things and consuming things. It's all being disrupted at the moment. And
it's about sustainability, it's about disruption. And I think it's also a change of mindset. And I know you not only finished your MBA, but you also started teaching. So talking about transitions, you were in the fashion industry, getting an MBA, maybe more the hard skills, so to speak. And then you were giving back to the students. I'm wondering, what have you seen when you were a student to the students now? Obviously, with the technology, a lot has changed.
For sure. So just the same way, like I got approached to be a running coach. I didn't expect that. I had taken my MBA and then I was offered a teaching job. And I said, oh, wow, I never even thought about that, but I'll try. Sure, why not? And so I offered this unique perspective, having just been a student, coming back to the classroom and telling the students, hey, I just graduated from the school. And they asked me if I would like to take a couple classes and teach. So I shared a lot of personal stories with them. And I remember the people that motivated me when I was a student, and the networking and talking to people and the light bulb going off and going, I never even thought about that. But yeah, sure, I'll give that a try. So I say my career path is a little bit like water in a stream going around the rocks. You have a little obstacle in the way and the water just flows around it and we find another path. And we keep on going. So the teaching aspect of it as well, I went, okay, I can teach on the business side of the fashion industry and share a lot of stories along the way that are meaningful. So I had some students tell me after the class, they were like, wow, that was like my best class. It was so interesting. That was fascinating. Thank you so much for sharing all of that. And they connect with me on LinkedIn. And I still try to give them some kind of motivation when they're, looking for work or finding that path that makes them happy in what they do. So the teaching part has been really fun for me because I see those young people and their thoughts going, I want to work in this industry, but what is it that I really want to do? What makes me happy? And try things, right? I told them when we have career fairs and they're like, I don't know any of these companies. And I said, but you just don't look at that just at face value. Do some research, and you have no idea who these companies are. Go talk to people, and maybe they're not the company for you, but you are the person that somebody else they know is looking for. So you have nothing to lose by putting yourself out there.
And we all know that I heard the statistic that typically people have 5 to 7 different careers these days. And younger generation, they don't stay in a job like our parents for 40 years. They typically change. And now I was amazed by that number, 18 months to 2.5 years. So it's a very quick turnaround. If you start somewhere, stay 2 years, switch into something else. The opportunities are there. And if people or the young generations are open, they can get to know so many great things if they're open.
Exactly. And that's what I tell them too. Don't burn your bridges. Like start somewhere and then you find out it's not for you. Work hard and impress people. And if you move on or you make a connection through a vendor, like that's how I was working at a big high fashion company when I first graduated from FIT. And it was the fabric salesman that came in, and I was talking to him, and he said, I have a friend who started a company. You should really meet him. And I was like, okay. So I went to meet him. And the next thing I know, they asked me if I would they gave me some fabrics, and they asked me if I would design a small collection with those fabrics. And they were so beautiful. I went home on the weekend, did this whole portfolio for them. I brought it back on Monday, and they were like, when can you start? So I was never in a million years thinking that would ever happen. But then I joined this company because I spoke to one of our suppliers, and he connected the dots, and he said, oh, you would be a really good person at this company. You just never know who you're going to meet along the way while you're working. Maybe that company's not for you, but there could be another path from that company that's going to lead you somewhere that you never thought of.
I think you give fabulous wisdom for the younger generation or even older generation. It seems like we all can learn, and the learning never stops. So if people think the learning stops, look at Caroline. You went back to get your MBA. This is huge. It's an adaptation and a transformation to go back later in life. But I think it's such an enriching process of learning more. And I also think when you go back to school at an older age, you're hungry. You cannot get enough. You're like, what? Are we done already? Can I get another hour of this teacher? So I think the learning never stops. So I think I admire you for it never stops. You're always learning. You're always growing. And you want to learn more. And who knows, one day you come up with this innovative idea. We don't know. What can it be?
Yeah, I think keeping an open mind is the big thing. You ask some of the students, so what is it you want to do? And some give you if I want to work for this company and that's it. And I'm like, okay, that's great. Go for it. It's a great goal, but have a plan B. Or there might be that plan C that you never even thought about that opens your eyes. All of a sudden you just go, wow, you know what? I thought I wanted to do this, but actually I find this a more interesting idea, or suddenly you get passionate about something else, which is fine. And that's like you said, it's more acceptable today to change your mind. Whereas before, like in my generation, was like, oh, it looks really bad if you keep jumping jobs. They look at your resume. Oh, you only stayed there like 9 months. That's not good. What happened? Something bad must have happened. And no, actually another opportunity came up. So I think that's more acceptable today to say, yeah, I'm following a different path at the moment.
As long as we follow a path, and we have 26 letters in the alphabet, so we can have any plans. So thank you so much, Caroline. This is always inspiring to talk to you and uplifting. So good luck with your new ventures, and see you soon. Thank you.
Okay, terrific. Thank you so much. It's fun to talk to you. I had a good time too.
How great was it to talk to Caroline and learn from her transitions? It's not always easy, but it can get done with a positive mindset. And it's about the learning, it's about the growing. What are you taking away? Take it from the Iron Woman. We have episodes every Monday, every Wednesday. Don't miss out. There is something for everybody. And don't forget to order Get Loopy, getloopy.com. You get 20% off of your first order. Get Loopy is the plant-based snack. And Take It From the Iron Woman is also a book. You can get it on Amazon. It's a paperback or an ebook. Take It From the Iron Woman. See you next time.